Hey, what's up guys? So the time has come for the next round of upgrades here to my Audi Q5, where I'm going to be upgrading all the different custom installed radar detectors, laser jammers, dash cams, battery pack, the wiring, etc. As you guys know, in my car here, I like to have a ton of equipment installed, and it's specifically to do head-to-head comparison testing. So if I want to test all the different custom installed radar detectors or all the laser jammers, everything is installed here on one vehicle. It makes for much faster testing when everything's already installed and I can quickly switch between systems. And then of course everything is installed on the same vehicle, again to level the playing field here. Now there's a lot of stuff that's already installed here in the vehicle, and you can check out some of my previous videos for both the initial installation and the first round of upgrades. I'm about to do the second round of upgrades to again upgrade to the latest generation of custom installed radar detectors, laser jammers, etc. Now for the install itself, I'm going to be heading over to the very talented people over at Systems Unlimited in Bellevue, Washington to help me get this install complete. The installation itself we're going to be doing next week here, but before we do that, and I've got all the equipment lined up, I want to go over what all is installed here in the car, as well as what the key upgrades are for radar, laser, dash cams, etc. And some of the reasons behind not just like let's install the new stuff for testing, but also like what some of the key upgrades are compared to maybe what we had before. And so with that said, let's take a look at all the new equipment that's going to be going in here to my Audi Q5. All right, now to start things off, let's begin here first by talking about the radar detector upgrades. Then we'll move on to laser jamming and then to dash cams and wiring and whatnot. So starting off with radar, we're going to be upgrading the Escort Max CI 360 to the new Redline CI 360C. Obviously the Redline is going to be the newer version, and there's a couple key updates that I'm in particular looking forward to. Number one, the rear radar detector on the Max CI wasn't the same level of blind spot filtering compared to the front antenna, and so for that reason I would get a lot more blind spot falses on the rear antenna that I couldn't really deal with. Now with the Redline CI on the other hand, they've got like the newer antenna tech for both the front and rear antenna, so that should actually help to cut down on the blind spot falses. Additionally, I've got Wi-Fi in my car, so this is going to be able to connect to Wi-Fi for all the cloud capabilities. I'm not going to have to rely on my phone, a nice benefit. Escort cloud stuff has actually been broken for a little while. They've been working on that, but I prefer the Wi-Fi connectivity just because you don't have to mess around with the apps and stuff in the background. Additionally, it's also got the next gen VX shifters. They're basically smaller laser jammers compared to what we had with the Max CI with the Shifter Max heads. And those smaller shifters are actually going to come in handy once we go and start installing some additional laser jammers just to, well, save a little space here on the car. Next, we've got the Uniden R9. That's also going to be a combination of both a custom installed radar detector and a laser jammer. There's no custom installed Uniden stuff in here yet to upgrade. I've just been doing the windshield mounts like the R4, R7, R8 and stuff. So we're going to throw in the R9 radar detector. And then we're also going to be adding their laser jammers. So far in testing, their laser jammers have been pretty impressive performance-wise. There's still some concerns about like it's a newer system. What about customer support and parts availability and long-term longevity and reliability and whatnot? So we'll have a chance to get it installed and see what it's like in a longer-term installation, not just sitting here in a box or temporarily installed for testing and whatnot. Additionally, I've also got a second R9, which I'm going to be installing in my wife's vehicle to give her a custom installed radar detector and I guess maybe more critically the laser jammers. You can always do a windshield mount detector, but I want to add the laser protection as well. I kind of went back and forth on if I want to do R9 versus Redline, and I think for me really comes down to both the laser jammers seem to be pretty effective, especially compared to based on the guns that we have here in the area. The biggest difference I think is actually going to be with the radar detector performance and specifically the responsiveness. The range is great on both the R9 and the Redline CI, but the Redline is still kind of slow. The filtering is better, it's quieter, but the responsiveness, I can't really do anything to like speed up the detector and give me the performance I'm really looking for. I can do things to quiet down the R9, potentially even shut off K-band at times because there's so little K-band here in the area, so maybe run it as like a Ka-band detector only, so pros and cons, right? But I think that I'm going to be leaning more towards the R9, so that's what we're going to be installing in the other car in my wife's Kia. Moving on, I've also got the new Stinger system, the S850, so that's their latest and greatest radar detector. Plus I've got their new fiber optic laser jammers. Now starting off with the radar detector, that's going to be going to upgrade the current old radar detector that I've got in here, the old Stinger VIP. Unfortunately, that's a pretty out-of-date system at this point. It's also died. It no longer actually boots up and works properly for me anymore either. And so we're going to be removing the current Stinger setup and replacing it with a newer one. It'll be a lot of cables to remove, or actually more realistically probably cut, because so many of them are just buried in the car and they're all wrapped and bundled together. So we'll be cutting a lot of cables and running new ones for the Stinger system. Some of the things we'll be able to reuse, like the display in the car. There is an HDMI adapter that we're going to need to change the back-end HDMI connector. So there's going to be some kind of wiring changes that we'll make, but we're going to be upgrading the radar detector. I've heard some pretty good things as far as the new S850. We'll have to see, I guess, blind spot filtering. I'm kind of, I'll test it and see. That's the whole point, right? Also, as far as the Stinger laser jammers, we're going to be installing the new Stinger fibers in the car as well. Those are the super teeny tiny fibers. Now, the ones that I have the golden tips on the end, but Stinger actually just announced a new special edition series of their Stinger fibers. We're actually already pre-painted in like this dark gray color to better blend into the car and not have like the little brass tips. The connectors actually stand out as much. My installers are actually going to be spending time doing the painting, which is of course going to take time and labor and energy and whatnot to get that done. But I like the fact that the Stinger has that option available now. They weren't able to get it here in time for me for testing so that I could show you firsthand and obviously get it installed here in my car. But that is a cool option that's available there as well. And then as far as the Redenso RCM, I feel like radar detector wise, that system is kind of out of date compared to the new Escort, Uniden, Stingers, etc. Those have great range. They've also improved the blind spot filtering to a lot of times now even be better than the Redenso. They've got the multicolor display, they've got Bluetooth, they've got auto lockouts, not just manual. And I feel like the RCM now is sort of lagging behind. I was actually thinking of like, should I remove the system to maybe make room for the R9 or some of the other stuff as we get in there? We think just to save time for the installation, we'll just leave the RCM in place and I can have it there for testing. Also saves us from having to like redo some of the mounting hardware that we have inside the car, which I'll show you here in just a minute. But I guess that our plan for now is just to leave the RCM in place. Same thing with the NetRadar DSP that plugs into the ALP. That's installed too. Doesn't really add too much in the car. There's just a little alert LED right on the dash, and so we're going to leave that in place as well. Next, moving on to laser, let's talk about first the upgrades to the ALP. That's the system that the NetRadar DSP uses for radar, and the Redenso RCM can also connect to it, but I typically just run them standalone so I can run the ALP, which is my main laser jammer. That's the only one that I have installed both on the front and on the rear, because that's the one that I actually depend on for protection. All the other laser jammers are just installed in the front grille for comparison testing. But as far as the ALP, there are going to be some upgrades that we're going to do for the CPU, the heads front and rear, and the wiring. Now, one of the key reasons that I'm going to be upgrading the ALP is for the new CPUs that by the time you guys watch this video should be available. This is the new Hardware 6 generation CPU, and there are a couple improvements. They're not super huge or major or anything, but to quickly run through them, it's got an upgraded microcontroller inside, so 4 times the speed and memory compared to Hardware 4. Cool. Better power management, and also better detection of any sort of sensor failures. Hardware 4 can do that, but they've improved it here in the Hardware 6. I actually have a failed TX sensor in the back, which we're going to be replacing. And then ALP says that there's better hardware stability here in the new CPUs as well. So that's the CPU. Luckily, this is going to be pretty plug and play compared to like Hardware 4. Now, as far as the heads itself, my heads are about 10 years old. It was when the ALP first released, and it's pretty impressive the fact that the heads have actually lasted this long. I have had 2 or 3 of the regular heads die over the years and need to be replaced. Because they're so old, they actually have the original push connectors. And we're actually going to have to rerun the cables now because we're going to be upgrading to newer heads that use the twist lock connectors. Now, the reason that we're doing that, again, comes down to the CPU. It's only compatible with some of the newer regular heads, and then also only like the TX black heads, so not like the blues and greens, for example. Now, I've got the TX blacks, but I've got the older regular heads, so we're going to have to replace those. So that's kind of what all the different ALP heads are, and then also my rear TX head. Unfortunately, that died, but that's pretty easy to just like pull off the old one and pop the new one in place. I've got both a regular and a TX head up front, but for the upgrade, we're going to do like just a TX head in the front for the center, and then just 2 regulars, since that's kind of become like the standard go-to setup. And then as far as the TMG, I'm going to be upgrading to the Alpha 17, kind of the newer version of the TMGs. I've gone through several iterations of the Alpha 15s and actually had some hardware failures with the system actually frying itself, and I've replaced several CPUs for that reason, and then also like some of the heads. I don't know if it was a wiring issue or what it is, but we're basically just going to be like pulling out the existing heads. I've got no TMG CPU in there, and we're not going to be using my existing hardwire cable just to avoid any sort of potential like hardware failures that are going to happen, because I'm kind of getting annoyed of like frying TMGs. And so for that reason, I'll have it available and I can just kind of plug in the CPU as needed and then plug it into like my cigarette lighter for power. But yeah, we're going to be upgrading to the new Alpha 17. So again, 2 regular plus a VPR in the center. And speaking of which, let's actually head over to the front and take a closer look here. All right, so starting off first with the custom installed radar detectors. Most of them are actually installed down here in kind of this lower air intake. We've got the Redenso RCM, which we're going to leave in place, the MaxCI, which we're going to be swapping out for the red line, and then the NetRadar DSP. We're also going to be slotting in like a Uniden R9 right next to it as well, and we got to put the antenna in the back of the car behind the rear bumper as well. The Stinger, I've actually got that installed right here behind this removable cover, so I can pop this off. This is the current patch antenna right here for the VIP. We're going to be replacing this with the new S850. Now, speaking of removable stuff like this, The laser jammers, we're actually going to be installing those right in here. For the laser jammers, I've had these custom head covers built for testing to kind of like cover up all the heads. I've got the ones here in the center, and then also these magnetic covers here for the heads right there and over on the passenger side. We found in testing like these perform great, and so for the sake of simplicity, once we start upgrading everything, we're just going to put some permanent head covers in place and not bother with like all the connectors and magnets and stuff. Again, just to kind of simplify the installation for the next round of upgrades. Then as far as laser placement, this is going to take a little bit of reshuffling here. So like in the center, for example, we've got the regular ALP, ALPTX, TMG VPR, and the S-Cord Shifter Max. We're going to be removing the regular ALP and leaving just the TX head, replacing the TMG VPR with the newer ones, and then also we've got the S-Cord system installed. Now the newer S-Cords look like this. You can see the heads are actually going to be quite a bit smaller. They're brand new here. I can peel off this lens cover, but you can see it's going to be smaller here than the current system, which is really nice. Additionally, because we're going to be removing the regular ALP, we're going to be in its place putting one of these TMG Uniden laser jammers. So that's going to go in here as well. With the extra kind of like screw holes here on the side, it is a little bit wider than the other ones, so it's going to take some shuffling to figure out, you know, like how we stuff in all these different laser jammers here. So new S-Cord, Uniden, ALPTX, and TMG VPR, kind of figuring out like where everything is going to go. Same thing here for over on this side. All this kind of stuff is going to stay the same. We're just going to be adding in the Uniden laser jammer on this side, and then swapping out the regular S-Cord for the smaller S-Cords. And as you can see, like compared to the Unidens, it's nice having the smaller heads. It's going to give us a little bit of additional room to play with because these heads are a little bit bigger. In practice, having something like this can be nice just to, I think it looks better without the screw holes there. There's no bubble on the front, and it's going to be a little bit easier to hide, especially in like smaller crevices and whatnot. One of the reasons I picked this car specifically is just to have all the room in here for comparison testing, to be able to shove way too much equipment here into the grill. So we're going to be kind of updating this. Now, speaking of smaller heads, I've also got a set of the Stinger fibers, and look how tiny these are. Like, I'll pick up the S-Cord and the Unidens once again, and if we put these ones here all together, you can see just how much smaller these Stingers are compared to, well, all the traditional laser jammers, and that's going to be one of the biggest benefits here. They're so tiny. They come in a pair, so we've got a transmitter and receiver, so triples here, passenger side, center, and then driver side. Placement, we're still going to have to figure out exactly, to figure out like where's the best spots to put in here to make sure we're not dealing with reflections or heads that are recessed too far and whatnot. Should we install them there? Maybe not. It's going to be a little bit wobbly. I don't know. So probably in here somewhere. The outer heads, we've been talking to Stinger quite a bit to figure out like where's the optimal placement. They like to see the heads like installed as close as possible to the headlights here. So like, should we drill a hole here into the body panel? Can we drill away a little bit of the headlight to install it right here in the panel gap? Should we install it maybe right in here into this part of the plastic grille? Should we install it behind this, which I think is supposed to be like a headlight washer or something? I don't have it here in my car, so maybe we'll install it here in this area. So there's a lot of kind of details like that we've been looking at. There's also things like they recommend transmitter and receiver. You usually want to have the transmitter like slightly in front of the receiver, just in case like some of the fiber optic cables in there, in case something gets like sort of pointed sideways, damaged. You don't want one head firing into the other head. So having, I forget which is transmit and receive, but having, let's say this is transmit, you don't want it actually being able to like fire into the other head. So you'd put it kind of in front to make sure it can't actually be detected by the other ones. So there's a lot of like little details like that we're still kind of working out, but that's going to be the idea here for laser placement. As far as the rear of the car, that's still going to stay with the ALP. All we're going to be changing back there is just replacing physically the older generation ALP heads, same size and all, with the newer ones, new cables, and then swapping out the dead TX head back there for a new TX. Next, let's hop in the car and take a look at what we're going to do here in the interior. So starting off, this is going to be the main kind of displays here for the different radar detectors. We've got the Max CI right here. We're going to use the exact same display for the Redline CI, which is very convenient. The Redenso RCM, I don't really use it, but we'll leave it in here just so we don't have to redo these head holders like that. I've got my JBV1 phone here, right here, when I'm testing, you know, different Android apps and whatnot. My iPhone is usually over there on the magnetic mount charger. And then up here, I've got kind of the Velcro for some custom Valentine 1 concealed displays when I'm using. Got the V1 mounted right up there for now. Over here is going to be the Stinger VIP. This one, we should just be able to like remove this and pop on the replacement one. A lot of this stuff is still compatible, so should be able to reuse the existing heads here. I got my CarPlay here for Waze and whatnot. And then I've got my GoPro. I'm still going to leave this in place for recording radar detectors when they're mounted low. Got it shown here with an R3 for illustration. Right over there, I've got little LEDs. One is for the ALP. The other is for the Max CI. As far as the Uniden one, I don't know, like, should I do it here or should it maybe be combined up in there as well? I guess I haven't really thought about that part yet. We'll have to see. As far as the dash cams, I've got VFO 8229 Pro right there. You can see I've got the interior cam cable run right there, and then I've got these two cables running down for power and for the rear camera. Definitely want to get those hardwired and out of the way so I don't have the cables hanging down. Also, for future proofing, I'm going to run an additional cable like this. It's an older VFO A139 Pro cable, so it just uses the SMA connectors instead of the USB ones that they use on their current models. So if the time comes I want to maybe change and test a different one, I don't have to have my usual assortment of a bunch of different cables hanging down. I can just kind of like plug and play with different ones there. USB-C cable here, which I mostly use now for the GoPro when I'm recording. It was originally like a Redenso DS1/Thea cable, but I mostly just use it now here for the GoPro. And then down underneath here, we're going to be installing the controller and display for the Uniden R9, maybe make a little housing for it or something right there. That way we don't have to like redo something here. I was originally thinking of maybe pulling the RCM and putting like the R9, maybe controller and display in there or something would make it a little bit taller. I like having a little bit of extra space here, and I've got like a suction cup phone mount. You can probably even still see some of the suction cup circles and stuff. But since we'll be leaving it there, I guess we're just going to do the R9 right over there. And then down underneath here, we've still got the controllers for the ALP and the Max CI, which again, we can just reuse this for the Redline CI, which is very convenient. Cigarette lighter power here, wireless CarPlay thing, which is kind of annoying. If you guys know of any like good wireless CarPlay adapters, that would be awesome. And then I've got like my extra plugins here, expansion for different dash cams and whatnot. So if I want to do different plugs and stuff, I can just plug it in. USB expansion ports for phones, dash cams, etc. And then down here in this pocket, this is where I used to keep the TMG CPU. I've still got all the wiring here, kind of behind the TrueSpeed S. So if you look in there, you'll see the wiring for the TMG CPU. So we're going to reuse some of that, and I can always connect the CPU as needed, but because it's just going to be for testing, I'm usually going to leave this pocket empty. I usually keep my TrueSpeed S in there, so if I want to do a little bit of fun testing, shooting, whatever, when I'm out and about, that's what I now use this pocket for. Now here in the back of the car, we've got a couple dash cams. This is a Blackview DR970X Plus, and I've got a rear cam for the A229 Pro. You can see the cable right now is just sort of temporarily run like this, so it kind of runs into the car. Again, temporary install. We're going to hardwire it and have the cable run inside the trim like that. For this one, I've kind of been thinking of like running something else for the rear. As you can see, like I'm not super happy with Blackview nowadays, just kind of some of their issues that they've been having with feature drops and video quality and stuff. With the mount here, it's actually mounted directly onto the glass, and it's got these lines here for the rear defroster. I'm afraid that if I pull this one day, this is like an old mount for like a DR750X or 750S or something, old 1080p camera that I've just been reusing, because I'm afraid if I pull this, it might wind up ripping some of the lines here and just killing my whole like rear defroster. So I'm just leaving this in place for the time being. Now the next I want to go ahead and take a look at the battery packs under here, some of the wiring and CPUs in there, and also where we're going to be doing the R9 CPU in here. Now if you look in here, I've got the different battery packs for the different dash cams. So I've got two of the Black Box My Car like BI 750s battery there, and then the expansion underneath. These have been discontinued, but still great batteries. I really like those. And then I've got a couple batteries here, which have, I guess, also since been replaced, like Blackview B124, the predecessor to the B124X, and also a Cell-Link Neo and one of the expansions. So this is designed to power like my different dash cams in different directions. Some are dedicated to just like testing battery packs and whatnot. I've got some expansion stuff in the front that makes it really easy to plug in right in there, which is super convenient in the center console for one of these batteries. Now the issue is I actually had some issues with the wiring. If I pull back this right here, which is where I've got the different CPUs installed, you can see we've got the CPU for the Stinger and stuff, so we're going to have to pull that and replace it. Max CI we'll swap out for the Redline CI. ALP we're going to swap out for the new CPU. Redenso is down in there as well. Got ALP wiring, tons of cables. I can switch between regular in the front or TX in the front. Power, so a bunch of stuff to like, luckily most of the stuff we can just kind of like pull the old one, pop in the new one, and replace the cables, which is nice. Stinger will have to do something a little bit different. But the main reason I want to go in here and show you this is I've got two relays. These are designed to give me like the turn the stuff on and off with the car. Most of the fuses here in the car are on full time, and these relays are connected to what used to be a little cigarette lighter outlet right here that was ignition triggered to turn all this stuff on. In any event, the relay that I was using for my dash cams, if you take a look at the wiring, you can see it's burnt. I had some issues with this blowing. The relay would blow, and I've been like having to replace it and run fewer batteries and turn down like the voltage levels here so it draws less power, or I guess current draw levels, not voltage. So I'm going to have to like replace this. I bought a bunch on eBay to kind of swap them out and sort of limp along. We're going to have to like replace this wiring, obviously. Maybe the wiring was a little bit too thin to handle the levels of power that we're running through, so we're going to have to replace it with like some thicker gauge wire just to ensure everything works properly and obviously is safe. We don't have any issues with like fires and whatnot. So that is definitely going to be on the priorities to upgrade. We've got some expansion cables right here that we haven't used, so we're going to be taking advantage of a lot of these. This was really smart. I'm glad we had this done with the initial install, but we've got so much stuff to do that we're probably gonna have to run a lot of new wiring anyways. So a lot of stuff in there. And then actually, because a lot of the stuff is so cramped, there's not like a good place to install the R9 CPU. And so for that reason, we're actually gonna go over here onto the other side. Looks like I got an amp for a speaker, and maybe like down here we can install the CPU for the unit in R9, and got plenty of room in here for cables and mounts and whatever we need in there. There's more fuses you can see back here. Oh, coming back to the batteries real quick, I was thinking of upgrading some of these, like maybe swapping out to one of the newer, bigger capacity batteries, like a B130X or something, but those batteries are actually a little bit longer, and I don't think we would have the space to fit the battery and the cable connectors and whatnot, so I guess I'll just leave these for now. Maybe we can try like reorienting something. Luckily the connectors are the same. There's no expansion on some of those, but anyways, we'll take a look at maybe upgrading those, maybe not. You can see that for now I've actually got like I disconnected the hard wire. That's the one that was actually connected to like over here with the blown thing, and for now there's a cable that runs to just a cigarette lighter plug that I'm using instead for inside the car, so slower charging but at least safe charging, not using the existing hard wire. And so yeah, that's my plan here for the latest round of updates here for the Audi Q5. This is the part of the video where I would say if you want to stay tuned for updates, make sure you're subscribed for the next video where we actually go over the full installation and upgrade and everything. However, if you've actually watched this entire video, first off, thank you for doing so. And I figure somebody who would sit through an entire video like this is probably also super passionate about the stuff and interested. And for that reason, I'm assuming anybody who's made it to this point in this video probably already subscribed a long time ago. But either way, stay tuned for the next video for when we actually get this whole install done over in Bellevue at Systems Unlimited. And so with that said, thanks again for watching. This should be a fun project. It's always a big project, but it's time to get it done. So yeah, thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.